In this video for faculty using Blackboard at Lehman College, we're going to detail how to set up your gradebook. There's a couple different ways you can set up your gradebook, so we're going to go through both of them now. After you log into your course page, if you could go to the bottom left-hand corner of the screen under your control panel, click on Grade Center, and then click on Full Grade Center. You notice that from the last video, we have our assignments that appear on the right that we made. The first thing I want to talk about in the Grade Center is you'll see you already have a lot of columns, username, student ID, last access, etc. If you want to hide some of these, because honestly you don't need to have them available in the Grade Center. For example, the student ID, I usually hide that column just to get it out of the way, as well as the username on Blackboard. You can find that information if you need it, but you don't need it readily at hand. So the student ID. Good. Last access, I think that's a pretty useful column because that will show you when the last time a student logged into Blackboard. The availability is also something that I think you can hide. So it's good because you can get things out of the way in Blackboard, Blackboard's Grade Center that you just don't need. Now the two things we need to talk about with respect to the Grade Center is you have an option of calculating grades by a weighted total, which means you have percentages. For example, blog assignments are worth 20% of your final grade, the final paper is worth 30% of your final grade, etc. And then you also have a total. You can also, for example, say there are 300 total points in this course. Your final paper is worth 100, each blog is worth 10 points, etc. So if you need to decide how you're going to organize your grading system. If you're going by a total point system, where let's say there are 300 total points, and each assignment is worth, a different amount of points. All you need to do is really just create your assignments in Blackboard, and it will sort of take care of itself. If you go to total, if you're using total points, you can follow along. If not, you can wait just a minute until we get to the weighted total. You click on the double down arrow, and then click Edit Column Information. You have a choice of primary and secondary displays. If you're using a point system, I like to select the primary as the score and the secondary as a percentage. So for example, if you have 200 points out of the 300 possible, your final grade will be listed as 200, and then in brackets next to it the percentage that is. Okay, so that's a good resource for the students, a good way for them to see and understand their current grade in the class. Also, something you might want to consider doing is titling the column My Grade. This is very clear for the students. If they need to know their grades, which column is it? It says My Grade right there. I'll leave that as is for now, but just so you know. And then you can click Submit. You notice that with weighted total and total has a green check mark on it. This means, it's called the external grade, this means that is the current grade in the class for the student. So if you have the green check mark next to total, that means that you are using a total points system in your class. You're not using any weighted percentages. Okay, so if you're using total points, that's done. Your grade book is set up, you just have to add your assignments, and you're pretty much done. If you want to use percentages, so for example, your final paper is worth 30% of your final grade, your blog assignments are worth 20, etc., what you need to do is first change that external grade. So we can click on the double down arrow on weighted total and select Set as External Grade. Notice how the green check mark is now here. And if you're using whichever one you're not using, I would go ahead and just hide the column because students may ask you what it is and it's just unnecessary. So if we're using a weighted total, using percentages, this is a little more complex. You have to do a little more work. So we're going to show you how to set it up now. First thing you're going to need to do is move your cursor over Manage and then click Categories. First we have to create our categories before we can assign them a percentage amount. So you'll notice that some are already created here for you. It may look a little different because I did add an assignment, a blog, and a discussion board. And notice what happens when you do assign those assignments. It already classifies them or organizes them in their appropriate category. But to add a category, like a final paper category, for example, type that in, click Submit, and I also want participation, so I'll click on that. add a participation category. You can add whichever categories you like, of course. And that'll be good for now. So then I can click OK. So nothing's changed on the visual part here, we've just created our categories. But now what we need to do is go to that double down arrow next to the weighted total and click on Edit Column Information. And here again, I would recommend just titling it something very clear, My Grade. With weighted percentages, you don't really need a secondary display as a score or even a letter. I mean, if you have that on the syllabus, you can just keep it as a primary display of percentage. When we scroll down to section 3, this is the really important part. With columns to select, you don't need to pay any attention to that. What we want to focus on are categories. So what we're doing now is selecting the kinds of categories that we will use in grading. So for example, I'm going to assign blogs. I can click on that and click that arrow that kicks it into the big white box on the right. Assignments, we'll do that. Discussion, participation, and final paper, and blog project. Okay, so here are my categories, and they all look the same once they're over here. You just need to specify what percentage of the final grade each category is worth. Assignment, I'll go with 20. And you know what, let's say I have various assignments and I want to drop the one lowest grade. You could do that there by entering 1. Discussion board, I'll make 10%. Scroll down, and you notice as you're entering it, it's keeping track of it down here. Participation, 15. Final paper, 30. Blog project, 10. And blog we can eliminate. Sorry, that's my bad. I'll make that for you. Okay, so you'll notice that your total weighted is 100%, which it needs to equal 100, so definitely work that out. Calculate is running total, yes. Include this column in Grade Center calculations. You want to make sure that's checked no. Okay, make sure this is checked no. Everything else should be good. If you want to show the average of each assignment to the student or each column, you can. I choose not to. And then I click Submit. Okay, again, nothing's really changed visibly, but we've actually done quite a bit of work. We've created calculated columns, and now we've assigned them into the weighted total, which we've now retitled My Grade, and we have the green check to it, so everything is as it should be. One thing we may need to look at carefully is if our assignments that we create. For example, Discussion Board 1 is an assignment that we created in video 2. I'm going to click on that double down arrow and go to Edit Column Information. A few things we want to look at. First of all, it's worth 10 points. I have score as a primary display. I'm going to go ahead and select percentage as a secondary display. So that, for example, if a student gets an 8, it'll show the percentage, which is 80%. And we also want to make sure that our assignments, if we're using a weighted percentage, in other words, if you're assigning weighted categories in your grade book, you want to make sure that the assignment corresponds to the category. Here it's discussion, it's no problem. Okay, so we can go ahead and click Submit. You will want to do that on all of the assignments that appear in your grade book. Let's say that I want to create a different assignment like response A, something I hand out in class and I want them to do. In the grade book I can create a new column here. So I'll say that there's going to be 10 points possible. I'll have score as the primary display, percentage as a secondary, but notice it says no category. If it says no category and you're using weighted percentages, that grade is not going to be registered in your calculations. So you really want to make sure that that it corresponds. I'll say response, you know what, I'm going to put that in assignment, just so it goes in the right category and it's calculated correctly. Okay? And I'll click Submit. And there it appears. So now we can check around here if we're using weighted percentages, which we are. Let's say this student got an 8 on that assignment. This is the current grade in the class, My Grade with the green check on it. Sample blog, 10. Notice the differences in display. We have points, percentage. point. If we wanted to have a percentage as a secondary display, we could click on the double down arrow, hit Edit Column, go over here, and make that percentage the secondary display, click Enter. And so on and so forth. So we set up our gradebook. Everything seems to be in order. One thing that you may want to consider doing is providing a link over here for the students to access their grade directly. Now they can click on Tools if that's there for you, right, and find their grade through here, My Grades. That's easy enough. But you can also move your cursor over the plus sign, hit Create Tool Link. From the drop-down menu, select My Grades. And you can also title it the same thing, My Grade, My Grades. Make sure it's available to users, and click Submit. So now when students want to know their current grade at any point during the course, they can just go to that dominant tab, click on My Grades, and it will take them there. And it's clearly labeled their current grade because it says My Grade if you title it as such. So going back to our Grade Center again, in the control panel, you'll notice we have everything set up as need be. And so, best of luck with the Grade Center.